Welcome to our podcast, Michelle and Stacey, all things small business.
We hope you enjoy this episode and please visit our website, michelleandstacey.com.au.
That's MICHELLEANDSTACEY.com.au. We would love to hear from you.
Welcome to episode 8 with Michelle and Stacey, talking all things small business. Today, we're going to talk about the process for selling your business. Selling your business is one of the biggest financial decisions that you could ever make. Get it right, and you can walk away with a great deal, and you can have minimal stress, hopefully. Get it wrong, and it can lead to lots of things like legal issues, tax nightmares, or you could even lose the sale altogether. In today's episode, we're breaking down the process for selling your business step by step. Whether you're months away or years away from selling, this is essential knowledge for every business owner. I guess, Stace, why do you think we really need such a defined process? Well, there's a lot of reasons, Michelle. Yeah, it's a lot of reasons. And I think for the business owner out there, I think they'd find it complex. It is complex. It is complex. And it's not something you do every day, is it? So how are you going to know about it when it's not something you do every day? When you've got your own business and you're working every day, working on your business, come on, by now you know it back to front. You know what you're doing. Selling your business, it's like a one-off. It is. And so what do you think they're going to do? Do you think most business owners will just wing it and just hope for the best? Or do you think they'll reach out and try and get some advice from people? Well, it depends on the person, doesn't it? It does. Hopefully, they will seek to get some advice. And we're not saying that they don't, like you don't know what you're doing, but it's like anything in business, isn't it? Like you need people to bounce things off. You do. Yeah. And particularly when it's a new area like this. And so I guess what we're trying to do in this episode today is really give people a bit of an idea on what to look out for. Yeah. And you want to make sure that the deal doesn't fall apart. Definitely. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to have a clear structure. Yeah. On what and if you've got a really clear structure, it can provide real transparency, and it can also help you reduce legal risk. Because ultimately, once you've sold, you don't want the seller or the purchaser coming back, a year or two later going, oh, I didn't know this, blah, 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 and get all these legal issues. No, you want to walk away being stress-free. Definitely. By going through a defined process, making sure you're ticking every element off and you've considered it, you're more likely to probably maximise the sale price. I reckon you would, yeah. So. Yeah. And also, it also helps you kind of be professional or appear as professional, even if you're quite cash. Like Stacey and I are pretty cash, but we like to think that we're professional. And the reason you want to do this is you don't want to scare off the potential purchaser, do you? Because they want to make sure that they're buying something that they think is really worth buying. And if they think it's a bit airy-fairy and they're not, that you might kind of scare them away. Absolutely. Like you're really right about that. And I think if you can have all the understanding, you're ticking all the bits off that need to be ticked off, but you're also doing it in a casual way, it builds rapport between that purchaser and that seller. Yeah. And it also builds trust. And so when you're doing that, that's where everyone can feel more comfortable with the process and working through all the elements. So what is the process? It's a great question. There are, I'd say, an 8-step process. Yeah, I reckon. Is how I would look at it. Now, what are the 8 steps I hear people ask for? I would be saying that they're communication, information, negotiation, legal contracts, tax implications, finance for the purchaser, staff negotiations, or implications, whether they call it negotiations, implications. Yep, absolutely. And due diligence. Yeah. Don't you say it? Oh, I think so. So let's break them down. Really, I think I guess, like probably most people are listening to this, do listen to a lot of podcasts, right? And I was actually listening to one this morning driving in, and it was talking about how businesses is based on communication, really. So, and this is no exception. So the more you can communicate, the easier it is for everyone to understand.
Yeah.
So, if you look at the best businesses, I've got a friend of mine who has a very successful business, and she's got certain skills, but her husband, she said, is a fantastic communicator, and they've built a business from nothing to employing 650 people. Massive, yeah? But it's all, I'm not saying it's all him, but I'm sure that helps because he's a good communicator. And why does that help the business? It helps because it makes people understand and it makes people feel that they're valued. So if you've got a potential purchaser and you know how to communicate well with them, you can make them, one, feel important, and make them feel like, hey, I'm buying something that's really worthwhile. And get them excited. You want them excited about buying a new business. I mean, who's going to go and buy a new business going, oh my God, no, thank you. They're going to go, oh, this is fantastic. Let's get on to this. Let's do it. I really want this. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're going to be waking up day after day having to turn up and do the work at the business. And if they're not passionate or motivated with it, they're not going to be wanting to get out of bed and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So communication is key, as they say.
And that's probably why we mentioned it as our first element.
Exactly. The second one that you mentioned, Stacey, was information.
Yes.
Now, why do you reckon information is so important?
Well, once you've got someone interested and you start talking to them, they are going to want to see, actually what is this all about, and what are the numbers? What contracts or, things do you have in place? So they're going to start to ask for some information. And so you need to really be ready to give information that's going to be meaningful to them and tell a bit of a story, but not too much information.
Well, I'm going to stop you there because before you give any information, this is what I would suggest. One, you need to talk to your advisor that you have. Two, you need to make sure that the potential purchaser has signed a confidentiality agreement before you get to giving any information. And I mean any information, because once you've given it and there's no confidentiality agreement, can't even say it, you have lost it, right? Yes, information.
Yes, you basically may as well have published it on the internet to the whole wide world.
That's right. But you don't want to give them, as Stacey was saying, all the information all up front. You need to give them relevant information. It's like an entree. It's like an entree. So you start it and you go, this is quite nice. I want to keep going.
And then you want to get them hungry. You want to get them asking for more. So that way you can then start giving them bit by bit more, and you can tell more of a story behind it and make sure that the appetite is still there.
Yeah. And just going back about the complexity, I guess this is where you can, you need someone to help you work through that. When do I give them and what information? So unless you've done it before, which, let's face it, some people have done it before and they know, but really you don't want to go and give them everything up front. So you really want to step it out. When do you give the right information at what particular time? How much?
Yes.
And don't forget as well, because getting the information is a lot of work for you.
You don't think it is, but it is. It is a lot of work. And also you want to present it in a nice way as well. So some people will use like a marketing expert, or there's lots of AI out there as well.
Yeah.
But they will create it into like what I'm looking for, like a
beautiful document.
Yes. Yeah. It might be like an information memorandum. It might be a bit of like a slide deck. It might be, there's all different ways that you can produce that information, and that'll come down to your buyer. Which we talked about, I think, in a previous episode about knowing your buyer, knowing your purchaser. Are they really tech savvy? Because then they might like something that's a bit, glossy and things. Are they more, they like to, touch it and feel it. So you might want to give them a nice coloured printed version of something.
Yeah.
Coming back to what the content is, so they can make it all look pretty and things later, but what is the content of what you're giving them? It is important to make sure you're not giving away too much,
You've got to give away enough to keep them interested and hungry for more.
That's right. And so when we say not too much, I wouldn't be giving them the names of your key suppliers or the names of your key customers.
Or the salaries of your staff, or, you know, really quite detailed information. You can give them like high-level P&Ls. You don't even need, depending on what the business is, but you don't even necessarily have to give them a balance sheet because, hey, the balance sheet is how you run your business and how you fund it. They can fund it whatever way they want. They may want to know things like what's the average debtors and how do they pay and stuff like that. That's part of your balance sheet, but that's relevant. You don't have to give them, like if you've got funding and stuff, that can be personal and you might not want to give that to them. But yeah, certainly things like debtors, creditors, you know, if you've got debts with the tax office and stuff, that's none of their business. Yeah. So you kind of be selective on the information, but the profit and loss, you probably would pretty much give them all of that.
Yeah.
And you may massage that a little bit because you want it to show what is the owner taking out potentially. Yeah. That's another important thing, which again, you know, you probably want to get, you know, your accountant or someone to be able to do that for you.
Definitely. I would be definitely getting your accountant involved before you start providing financial information, because if it gets further down the line, which you hope it does, right? You know, you're doing this because you want to sell the business. If it gets further down the line and these conversations progress, you don't want to be going to your accountant or financial advisor or whoever's going to help you at that point to say, oh, I've already given them this and now they're asking for all this other stuff. And then the financial, oh, actually, they're not quite the right numbers. Why did you give them them?
It needs to be proven back to what you've actually submitted to the ATO and the tax returns and stuff. So you can't make it up. It's got to be, you know, they want to verify the source, and the source to be verified is what you've lodged with the ATO.
That's right. And you don't want to have to go back to that purchaser and say, oh, sorry, those numbers I gave you before, they're not quite right. Here's the right ones. Yeah. And then here's all the extra information that you wanted as well, which matches up with that.
To lose credibility.
Absolutely. That could sink your deal. Yeah. Because it can lose trust when you do that. Yeah. So, because, you know, if I can't trust the information you gave me at the start, why would I want to trust the information you're giving me now? So you just got to be very mindful. So it's really important to get the right help and the right information at the right time.
And the next step is negotiation. And you go, hang on a minute, why is that part of the process? It's actually really key part of the process, because I don't know about you, Stacey, but I've had, you know, a few different clients who are selling their business. Some go, no, I'm cool. I know exactly what I want, and this is how I'm going to negotiate. And others are a little bit hesitant, and they're not so used to negotiating, and they just want to get the sale for one reason or another. So they may give everything away. You really want to I'd suggest workshop it and say, who is going to do the negotiation, right? Sometimes it's you being the seller of your business. Sometimes it might be your accountant. It might be a lawyer. It may be someone else, right?
Could be a business broker.
Yeah. Someone who is good at negotiating and knowing, like, what are you going to negotiate and when?
Absolutely. And this links really back to the other episode that we did on knowing your buyer, knowing your purchaser.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you know what motivates them and why they want this deal, why they're interested in your business, that will play into your strategies and into your psychology and working through how you want to play this and who's the best to do the negotiation will all come out of a lot of that. So there's a lot of merit in these steps. They're not just things that we've thrown together. These are things that have come from experience.
That's right. And the next one is what you suggested was the legal contracts. And I think last episode, was it last episode we had Andrew? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was talking about all the legalities and the contracts and stuff. So that definitely is a really important process, a part of the process or a step. So we don't really want to go into too much detail, but we suggest, if you haven't already heard that previous episode with Andrew, that you listen to that and talk about that. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
The only bit I'd add to that is you mentioned before about confidentiality agreements. They're really important. They can also sometimes be known as NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. Yeah. But I think, the rest of that is really, I agree with Andrew's episode.
Yeah,
definitely.
And then the next step is the tax implications. And again, I guess that's where your tax accountant or your advisor comes into play, right? Because sorry, I'm not saying this, but everyone's an expert in certain things, right? We are experts in tax. You need to talk to your accountant. You can't assume anything because really you don't want to go down the track and negotiate and then find out, oh my God, I've negotiated all this and have horrendous tax implications, right? Which you could have avoided had you gone through this in the first place.
Definitely. And we did do an episode with Robert.
Yeah.
Was that 2 episodes ago? I think?
Yeah.
Of which we talked in there about some of the tax.
Some of it, yeah.
So not all of it, but some of it.
Yeah.
And there is a way that potentially, if you get the right advice and you can, what is it? Dot all your I's and cross all your T's, you potentially could even get the whole thing tax free.
Yeah.
So
if you qualify,
if you qualify, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth seeking advice on this early, because if you seek advice on it once you've sort of already done the deal, you're less likely to be able to potentially get it tax free. So
that's right.
Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah. So it's definitely worth a discussion with your tax advisor on it.
And the other thing, I think the next step is the finance for the purchase. You go, well, hang on, why is that involving me? I don't really care where they're going to get the money from. Well, yes, you do.
You want to be paid.
That's right. You want to be paid. You don't want to go all the way down the track and go, oh, we want vendor finance. I'm like, what? Vendor finance? You want me to fund your purchase? I don't think so.
So that's what vendor finance means, just in case you don't know. It sounds really fancy.
I'm going to pay you and I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to pay you off over 5 years and I'm not going to pay you any interest and da-da-da-da. Hello? We're not a bank.
And also it's highly risky because if that business that you sell then fails because they don't know how to run it or the strategy that they want to put in place after you're out, you've sold it, or turns not the way that was all planned.
No.
There's no money coming in. So there's no money for them to pay you.
That's right. And the other thing is, like, I've had a couple of times where people go, oh yeah, they're a cash buyer, blah, blah, blah. Go all the way down, go, oh, cash buyer, great. And then all of a sudden you get an email from the bank going, provide me with all this information, blah, 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 blah. Hang on a minute. This is a cash buyer. Why do you want to get your bank involved if you're a cash buyer? No, they're not a cash buyer at the end of the day. So can they get the finance, right? You want to make sure that they can fund this business, because why waste your time if they can't?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think, sometimes they are a cash buyer at the start, but they haven't sought advice from their financial advisors or accountants.
And they go, borrow. Yeah, fine, fair enough. But you want to make sure that they can buy it. Because don't waste your time. If they haven't got the money, go away. It's not like, if you're selling products and someone goes, hey, I'd like that, but, I can't really afford it, but give it to me anyway. You're not going to give it to them. No. They need to be able to afford to buy it. You need to make sure that they can afford to buy it.
Yeah. So I'd say a little tip there would be ask the purchaser at some point early-ish in the transaction, have they had a discussion with their advisor about how they're funding the purchase?
Well, not just that. You want to look them in the eye and go, can you afford it? Tell me how you're going to pay for it, right? Because if you really have a pretty honest discussion, I think you'll soon find out that whether they can or they can't. You don't want to just have a breezy conversation. You want to have a conversation. Can you really afford it? And try and satisfy yourself that they can afford it.
Staff implications.
Yeah. Is the next one. What do we mean by that?
Well, this is one that we're going to dive into actually in the next episode.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. But just to touch on it here is you want to really work out how you're going to handle the discussions with the staff, with the employees, and are they part of the deal? Are you negotiating a deal where your staff are moving across with the purchaser?
It's about timing and when you're going to tell staff as well, right? Now, there might be some staff that you need to tell up front and others you might not want to, because if your staff can get really nervous if they think you're going to sell the business and they might not think up at a job. And look, let's face it, these, the deal, the time it takes to do the deal could be a year. So you might end up having all this stuff done, all the negotiations, lose some staff because they got nervous because you didn't tell them and they found out and they They wanted to make sure they had a job and all this kind of stuff. Deal falls through. You've got no staff, no sale, and you spend all this time. So you really want to make it clear on what are going to be the implications. And again, the process for your staff, when you're going to tell them, and not just when you're going to tell them, what's going to be the plan for them. Yeah. Going back to step 1, communication. Yeah. They want to make sure, and particularly if they're really good stuff, you want to make sure that they're well looked after. Even if they're not going to go with the sale, you're going to say, hey, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to potentially go with the business, but I'm going to look after you and this is what I'm going to do. I really need you to stay. I'm also then going to help you find a job, whatever, right? But it's communicating at the right time with your staff. And the other part, sorry, I'm on a roll here, but working out, and I guess this goes back to, working out your whole value of the business and all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
But if they don't go with the business, what do you have to pay? Because obviously, you might sell your business for X. Let's say it's $100 you're going to sell it for. But if you've got staff obligations of 50, well, you're going to pay it out. You're only going to get 50 in your hand, not 100.
Yes. Yes. So it can kind of link back into one of these previous steps. So
Yeah.
the tax implications.
Well, not in that, but cash in your hand.
That's a really good one. So
What's the last step?
the last step, due diligence.
And why do you call that a step? I mean, I guess it's really a combination of all of this, isn't it, at the end of the day? But it is a separate step.
It is a separate step because if you don't do it, there's a lot of risk in there.
Yes.
So you want to avoid litigation and you want to avoid the sale falling through or being a failure, right? So sometimes in the deals, there's some cash up front and some, an earn-out arrangement. So some cash then along the way afterwards. If you haven't done your due diligence to understand what they're going to do with the business afterwards and whether, what risk lies in that, for example, then you're kind of leaving the door open to potentially not getting that extra money.
Well, that's due diligence for you on selling it.
But
also, I'm talking about I'm saying as well due diligence for the purchaser. And you go, okay, well, I've given them all information, but you've got to be careful here. And going back to what you just said about the legal risk, they'll rely on that information. And if you've given them the wrong information or not enough information to support something, then they'll come back and sue you.
Yeah. And it could even be that you've given the right information, but you haven't given enough and you've led them to believe down a path that's not right, which you should have and could have put them on the right track by giving them slightly more information or making the information you provided clearer. So you've got to be very careful with what you provide, how you provide it, and the story that sits alongside it.
So, for example, if you've got set contracts in place with a supplier or a distributor or whatever, you need to show those contracts in the due diligence, which is the last part of the process. So they can't come back and go, but hang on a minute, you told me that, you had a contract with Joe Blogs for 3 years and it's only 1 year. Go, hang on a minute, that was given to you. You had the contract. It was in the due diligence process. You can't come back at you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why due diligence is
So
part of the process.
So okay, so once we've gone through all the 8 steps, I guess we've got to kind of go, okay, have we done it? Have we done it well? Because really, when you go to sell your business, it's really, selling is a business. Like the business is a journey. It's not really just a transaction.
Yes.
And it's a up and down journey, and it can be a long journey if it takes, the deal takes a long time. It could be,
Yeah. And it could be a journey with a few different people.
Yeah.
Because it could be the one buyer, the one purchaser, but you've got to deal with all these different people along the way, their financer, their accountant, your accountant, all these different people. Or it could be that you go down you start the journey with one purchaser, you get halfway through, no, it's not going to work out, they don't have the money for it or whatever. So you end that one, you walk away, and then you've got to start the journey again. It is.
But if you've got your processes and our, 8 steps within that process, and if you start the journey, and that falls through, you've got it all documented and you know what you're doing. So the next time around, it's going to be much quicker. much, faster. You'll feel a lot more confident. It's going to help you, one, maximize value. It's going to avoid any legal headaches, and hopefully you can walk away, with a deal that really works for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening today. And our next episode will be on staff implications and the impact that it has on staff. So please join us for our next episode.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope you found it informative and useful. We would like to clarify that this podcast is for educational purposes only. The conversations are of a general nature and do not qualify or constitute as financial or tax advice. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect any official stance. We make no guarantees about the accuracy, reliability, or completeness of the information presented and are not liable for any losses or damages arising from its use. We recommend you seek the advice of your own legal, financial, or other licensed professional before making any decisions based on the information provided in this podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and tune in again soon to listen to further episodes.